speaker panel, Biotech Perspectives, Revolutionizing the Future of Healthcare. So today's event will be centered around biotechnology, biomedicine, all of that good stuff. We're super excited to have 5 amazing panelists in the field joining us today. So to introduce myself, my name is Eileen. I'm an incoming freshman at Columbia, and I'm one of the co-founders and co-presidents of STEM to the Sky.
Hi, everyone. My name is Annie. I'm one of the other co-founders and co-presidents of STEM to the Sky, and I'm an incoming freshman at University of Pennsylvania, and I'm hoping to study mechanical engineering.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sasha, and I'll be one of the hosts for today's event. I'm an incoming freshman at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, and I'm also one of the members of marketing and outreach team here at STEM to the Sky. I'm really looking forward to get this event started.
Hello, my name is Maren. I'm also the other host for this panelist. I am an incoming senior at Fukuoka International School, and a special thank you to all of those who are here today, as well as to our panelists who will be sharing their experiences and insights in their respective fields of biomedical engineering.
So today's event aims to share the experiences and advice of experts in biomedicine and biotechnology, and we also have one student in the field to share his experiences as a student. And we also want to inspire our audience's interest in the field and the wide variety of opportunities that exist in the field of biomedicine, biotechnology, and bioengineering. Everyone in the audience will have the opportunity to ask questions about our panelists' experiences with pursuing this fascinating field, as well as their specific areas of expertise. And we're very excited to have Dr. Evan Scott, Dr. Korie Grayson, Dr. Anna Maria Blocki, Karthik Iyer, and Amir Davis. So they're here with us today, and they're going to share their knowledge and experiences.
So here's an overview of today's event. First, we'll have Aileen and Annie briefly introduce STEM to the Sky. Then our 5 amazing panelists will introduce themselves, and they will give a general overview of their backgrounds and careers. Then we will transition into the main part of the event, a Q&A and discussion. Using the topics and questions you guys have provided us from the event RSVP form, the panelists will provide deeper insights into their respective fields and experiences. And then we will open up the floor to any live questions you may have for the panelists.
And to wrap up the event, we will share panelists' contact information in case you want to reach out to them with further questions. And we will also discuss who you can get involved with STEM to the Sky. And I will now be handing it over to Eileen, who will explain more about what STEM to the Sky really is.
Great, thanks so much, Sasha. So STEM to the Sky is a completely student-run 501c3 nonprofit. It was founded in 2020 by Annie and me. Our mission is to empower middle and high school students from all around the world, no matter their background, to pursue their STEM aspirations and learn about all of the opportunities and possibilities in STEM, as well as kind of showcase all of the diversity, not only in terms of careers, but people as well in STEM. So some of the ways we do this are through conducting and featuring interviews with STEM professionals on our website, and we also host speaker events like this one. So Sasha will now post a link to our website in the chat so you guys can check it out.
And then in terms of our reach, our team is made up of up to 30 members, many of whom, like Maren, are international, and like Sasha. So it's really cool. We have a very diverse and international team. And we've also been able to reach a lot of countries around the world through our marketing and outreach team. So as of now on our website, we've reached over 80 countries, and we've featured over 40 interviews with STEM professionals, STEM individuals, and we also have a student series ongoing. And then we also do school outreach. So we share our platform and our resources with different schools around the country and around the world. So as of now, we've reached up to 300, and I think around half of them are international schools based in Asia.
Right. Finally, passing it on to our panel for today, we are so excited to introduce our 5 panelists. Without further ado, please welcome Dr. Anna Maria Blocki, an assistant professor of the Institute for Tissue Engineering and Regenerative Medicine at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, who is researching innovative approaches to modulate disease microenvironments for healing in ischemic diseases and modeling microphysiological vasculature systems.
Hi, so my name is Anna. I guess this is the point where I introduce myself. So I'm indeed an assistant professor at the School of Biomedical Sciences and the Institute for Tissue Engineering and Regenerative Medicine. Although I have my background in molecular biology, I did my PhD in biomedical engineering, and very early on started working on stem cells and tissue engineering. So I think without going really into my research topic, I think what is quite unique about my pathway is that although I am not Asian, I spend a lot of my professional life in Asia. So I have indeed done my PhD at the National University of Singapore, and I did a postdoc there. I also did a postdoc in Berlin at the Charité, and then I actually moved to Hong Kong, and I've been working in Hong Kong as an assistant professor for over 5 years now. And yeah, I'm very happy here, and I wouldn't want it any other way. Okay. So yes, okay, now I can see it. So wow, this is more me outside of research. I'm a very active person, so I love the outdoors and I love animals, as you can see. So what you can see in the pictures is basically my dog, Kira. She's a bit crazy, and she would do everything for a pet or for a hug, and she has a lot of competition because I have 2 kids. So in the pictures you can also see my son Ben, who's 3 years old now, and my daughter Lucia, who's 8 years old now. And we do spend a lot of time hiking and at the beach. You can also see my sister in one of the pictures. She's living with me in Hong Kong for the past 2 years. And besides being in the water or outdoors, I also love horseback riding. So this is a passion I'm also sharing with my daughter. So she is also a vivid horse rider, and we actually spent our last holiday riding on the beach. So that was pretty great. Yeah. Yeah, so I think one of the things to point out here is that if you go for academic career, even as a woman, you still can have a very balanced life, and you can have a good family life. And actually, being in a profession where you're so highly independent on how you work and where you work, you can make it all happen.
All right, thank you, Dr. Blocki. I think this was actually very inspirational to many people, especially for me, for sure, since I plan to pursue the same field, and to see that you can have such a fulfilling life outside of your work is really encouraging. Now I'd like to welcome Karthik Iyer. He is currently a student at Johnson & Johnson Global Operations Leadership Development Program, and he has recently graduated from the University of Pittsburgh and performed neural interface research at the Biointegrating Optoelectric Neural Interface Cybernetics Lab.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Karthik, and I'm a recent grad from the University of Pittsburgh with a biomedical engineering major and a focus in signals and imaging and a neuroscience minor. So in terms of work experience, I started off as a research assistant at the Biointegrating Optoelectric Neural Interface Laboratory at the University of Pittsburgh. I know it's a mouthful, but we call it Bionic. Basically, what we did there was using 2-photon microscopy, we were able to analyze the neural responses of the brain based off of intracortical microelectrode stimulation. So what we did is we took mice, and with microelectrodes, we inserted them in the visual cortex and laid the groundwork for brain-computer interface interactions. On the right, you can see some of my research where we looked at how excitatory and inhibitory patterns shifted over time post-microelectrode insertion and stimulation. So that's sort of my academic research. In terms of industry, I started working for Johnson & Johnson during my junior year of college. I started off as a co-op in the Strategic and Continuous Development Division of Janssen R&D, which is their pharmaceuticals division. I got really lucky to work on something known as CAR-T, which is an individualized pharmaceutical, unlike most pharmaceuticals out there. So it is a one drug for one patient. It is custom curated. And to manage that, we had something called the chain of custody, where we sort of managed that whole process from the patient at a research site to the creation of the drug and then delivering it back. So I got to help out with that. So that was sort of the science side of my co-op. And then I wanted to try something else and look at how biomedical engineering can be used and how healthcare is as an industry from a different perspective. And I got lucky enough to be part of the healthcare compliance internship program that worked in pharmaceuticals yet again due to my background and experience. And there I helped conduct a corporate integrity assessment as part of the J&J gap assessment. And there we were able to look at where the OIG, also known as the Office of Inspector General, was leaning towards when it came to compliance laws and regulations. And currently, I'm looking at another aspect of the company, which is business, and part of the Global Operations Leadership Program in Johnson & Johnson. So here, I'm more focused on the supply chain commercial side of things. And for my first rotation, I am part of the digital strategy group. I'm a data analyst there, and I work for the Janssen supply chain. So yet again, farm side of things. And it's really lucky because I'm able to gain a very high overview of how the entire supply chain works from the formulation of the drug till the delivery of the patient. And it uses a lot of my expertise, which is technology. So I'm able to provide digital support such as lifecycle management, knowledge management, and digital upskilling along all aspects and processes of the supply chain. So in terms of experiences and hobbies, I love outdoor activities such as camping, hiking, scuba diving. I am a Eagle Scout, so being in nature is in my blood. I also love to sing and perform. When I was in college, I founded a Western a cappella group called Tonal Disruption, and during our first year competing, we became the regional champions. I also love to sing a lot, so I joined a South Asian fusion a cappella group known as Pit of Oz, and we were able to compete and travel around the nation. I also acted back in high school in different plays and musicals from Annie all the way to High School Musical. It's really a good time. Along with that, I am a part of CORE, which is Chinra Organization for Rural Development, and we raise funds and educate villages in Himalayan mountain ranges as part of our initiatives to provide them with knowledge in fields such as leadership, money management, hygiene, women's empowerment, things like that. So that's sort of my community service initiatives. And I also love to play video games, and I'm an avid enjoyer of fitness. I played basketball in high school, so hopefully I can keep some of those good habits coming along. That's sort of what I like to do. I'm a very jovial person. I like to take life as it comes, and I like to interact and learn from a lot of people. So I'm looking forward to talking to everyone today.
Thank you, Karthik. It is fascinating to hear how your experiences in the industries lies on a very broad spectrum, from designing the actual drug to its delivery to the patient. We would now like to introduce Dr. Korie Grayson, a biomedical engineer, chemist, a STEM diversity advocate, and a science policy fellow.
Hi, everybody. I am Dr. Korie with a K, not a C. So I am a first generation student, or was. My mom actually just graduated with her bachelor's at 57, so super proud of her. I'm a proud alum of the HBCU, Historically Black College of University, Norfolk State University, where I got my bachelor's in chemistry, pre-med. So I had aspirations at one time of becoming a different kind of doctor, MD, but then that changed when I realized I didn't really like hospitals that much. And after seeing a few babies be born, I'm like, you know what? I think I'm good. So after that, I spent what we call a gap year, a very unplanned gap year or two. But I did end up working for a biomedical device company called CryoLife, where I worked on the Hero graft, which was dialysis graft. So basically patients who constantly undergo dialysis, something usually happens with their veins. They either what we call stenosis, collapse. And so our device was kind of one of their last leg, kind of improve their quality of life. So that was cool to be on the more manufacturing side of industry. But during that time, I realized I wanted to go back to school. And so I decided to go for a PhD. So I got my master's and my PhD in biomedical engineering from Cornell University, where I studied cancer drug resistance in 2D and 3D prostate cancer cell culture environments using nanoparticles. So I got into more drug delivery, specifically prostate cancer, because cancer unfortunately affects so many people we know and love, right? But personally in my family, it affected my grandfather, and he actually passed while I was doing my dissertation. So in that I realized, how disproportionately prostate cancer affects specifically the Black community. So I wanted my research to kind of focus, give me purpose. And so I got through that. It took me 5 years, 10 months, and 210 pages, but I made it and then moved on to a postdoc. And so I went to University of Michigan and did a postdoc in chemical engineering. And there I took some of the tools I learned in my PhD and moved that over into a different kind of way, using more chemical engineering. So looking at nano microparticles that were polymer-based and treating different using therapeutic interventions to treat inflammatory diseases, specifically lung inflammation from like COVID, as well as colorectal cancer. So I kind of just switched cancers. Currently, I am a AAA Science and Technology Policy Fellow, placed in the new Technology Innovation and Partnerships Directorate at the National Science Foundation. So I'm basically learning firsthand about the intersection of science and policy. And within this new directorate, it's actually looking at emerging technology. So that can range from anything from advanced wireless, semiconductors, biotechnology, robotics, AI. So I get to see the whole gamut of proposals that come through. And we, as you know, NSF is a funding agency. So I get to see projects. I'm on the other side now. Instead of asking for money, helping give it out in a way. So it's been super exciting. I work on projects that focus kind of on workforce development to support innovative ecosystems. So instead of having these ecosystems siloed into either Kendall Square in Boston or Silicon Valley in California, we want to make sure that we equalize it and spread it, make sure that people that normally don't have access, especially when it comes in terms to innovation, we can kind of create that equal access and also that opportunity, as well as capacity building. So having different institutions from HBCUs, minority serving institutions, Hispanic serving institutions, community technical colleges, just making sure that they can also be competitive when it comes to getting these grants and getting this money, and as well as different experiential learning opportunities. So we have these emerging technologies, but we need a workforce to support it, and we need learning opportunities and different kind of methods in order to teach people how to be involved and use them. So that all kind of has come together. So it's been very interesting seeing something as the CHIPS and Science Act and how it kind of codified the directorate and how we have to do things and acting according to Congress. So it's actually been a very cool journey. Sometimes I wake up and I have to go to a meeting, or I'm in a room with a congressperson or the director of NSF. And so it's been super exciting. But other than that, I consider myself an advocate in increasing the number of represented students in STEM by showing them that representation matters. It has a lot to do with images, and there's power in storytelling and public speaking and social media. Follow me on Team Korie. I'm pretty active on there. I'm also a part of different STEM initiatives geared towards basically empowering people to understand that they can kind of pivot in their careers. I always tell everyone to think of their career as a jungle gym. It is not a ladder, right? So you got to kind of have that inquisitive nature and understand risk management, but realize your career is not a one way. It can change at any point in time. I literally just went through how my career went. I never thought I would be here, but you just never really know. In my free time, I'm very much into interior design and organization. I think being in a lab all those years and having to keep things like pretty clean, it's now trickled over into my personal life. But I really enjoy things like speakeasies and museums and art shows. I mean, I live in DC, so there's always something going on, something to see, something to be a part of. But in a nutshell, that is me. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Grayson. I think it's pretty reassuring for people to hear that you can change your mind multiple times throughout your education, throughout your career, and the fact that you use your time to encourage other people to do the same and to look at what their strengths are and what their interests are is honestly really great. But now we would like to introduce Amir Davis, who is currently a bioengineering student. He's actually a senior at Stanford University.
Hi, everyone. Ooh, can you hear me? Hi, everyone. I'm Amir. Just wanted to say thank you so much for having me. As you know, I'm the lone student here, so I'm probably the least interesting, but I'm definitely also the least accomplished. So I'm here to learn just as much as you guys. But yeah, I'm a rising senior majoring in bioengineering, just kind of going chronologically for my relevant experience. Just before college, I was a research assistant at Brookhaven National Laboratory, which is in Long Island, New York. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but essentially there I was working as a material scientist because I knew I wanted to major in something engineering, but I didn't necessarily know that bioengineering was an option or if I wanted to pursue that. So as you can see in the description, working with cadmium, zinc, telluride, selenide, I know it's a mouthful, but essentially making that material into radiation detectors. But even though it wasn't necessarily what I ended up pursuing, it provided me with some invaluable lab experience. So I can't hate on that period of my life or my career. In Stanford, I was a researcher at the Huang Lab, where I studied, investigated the effects of probiotics on the microbiota and essentially the effects of salmonella on, or the effects of food extracts on salmonella growth. Um, Other research that I've done happened to be with genetically engineering E. coli to produce snail mucin, which was kind of a passion project for me. So yeah, on campus, I'm a part of the Society of Black Scientists and Engineers, and a former member of the Biomedical Engineering Society. So for other experiences and hobbies, I was the youth president of the Caribbean American Society of New York. And in that role, I primarily focused on, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the specialized high school system, but in a nutshell, there are 9 public high schools in New York City that are STEM based and it requires a test to get in. I went to one of them, Brooklyn Technical High School, and the first thing I realized when I got into the door is just how little people looked like me. So I wanted to get to the root of that issue, and I spoke at several NYC DOE events and in media kind of like this one on panels or just speaking to help educate and inform underserved communities like myself on the specialized high school process. I became a principal tutor for the preparation for the test. And really that's something that I would advise you guys to do, just to give back to your community and see what you can do for those around you. I think that's for the high schoolers, that's gonna help you in the long run, not just with college, but also just self-enriching and self-growth. Recently, I was a summer investment banking analyst at Jefferies. I know it's a little bit of a switch up, but I realized that going back, everything that I've done has been either research or bioengineering based. So just wanted to switch it up and explore. But literally a week ago, I got a full-time offer from the healthcare group. So that is something that I'm going to consider in the future. Hopefully I can defer it and maybe stay in a 5th year and get my master's. But yeah, as Dr. Grayson said, your career is not linear. So we'll just see where that takes me. Outside of all this, I like to do sports, other physical activities like basketball. I was the captain of the tennis team in high school. I like to play flag football and just overall stay fit. As you see in the bottom right picture, that's my Stanford intramural flag football team. We did not win at all, but we had fun doing so. But yeah, love to play video games, watch movies, spend time with friends. You see bottom left, me at Halloween. I think that's where life peaked right there, dressed up as Dora. Ever since then, it's been downhill. I'm playing. But top right, I'm having fun with friends in Paris. That I actually went the year before, spent some time there for spring break, and I studied abroad this past spring quarter. So that was really an amazing experience. And in college, I really hope you guys take the opportunity if it presents itself to study abroad. Top left, that's me looking despondent in my suit because yeah, that investment banking analyst hours, they're no joke. So yeah, that's me. Thank you guys for having me once again. Looking forward to hear the rest of the panelists. And yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you very much, Amir. It is so interesting to hear your perspective as a current student and also to get a glimpse of your university life. I also like how you took your experience that you had with like the specialized high school process to sort of give back to your community and to support other students as well. And to wrap up our panelist introductions, now we would like to welcome Dr. Evan Scott, an associate professor of biomedical engineering at Northwestern University, who investigates inflammatory and immunological processes in various pathologies and develops target therapies with engineering and material strategies.
Okay. Thank you so much for the introduction, for having me today. So as was mentioned, I was just actually promoted to full professor, so I'm the old person here, I guess. So I've been at Northwestern for 10 years. Really enjoyed my time here. And I work in the area of nanotechnology, nanomedicine, and I guess I can talk about that in the next slide. But so shown here is my lab. We're up to like 25 or so people, depending if we have enough undergrads and master's students as well. So I've really enjoyed teaching. I enjoy interacting with students. And one thing I really like about the professor is the ability to start like outreach programs. So I spend a lot of time trying to educate underrepresented groups, underprivileged groups about going into STEM fields, and particularly into engineering and science, where you actually can. I'm surprised a lot of people don't know this, but you know, we pay you to go to grad school. You know, we pay you to get a PhD, and so I did my undergrad at Brown, and I was, you know, I was one of those. There was only like 4% of the population was Black at the time when I was there. And so I was definitely one of those groups, underrepresented groups, and I didn't know what to do or what I wanted to do. I just became pre-med and I did engineering. And when I graduated, my class was the first time at Brown that they had a BME class or a major that was BME. So there was only 7 of us graduating at that time, and they had no idea what kind of classes we should take. So I was just pre-med. I took all the pre-med courses, and I took chemical engineering. So I did almost no electives. I had 2 electives, a French and an economics class. Everything else was pre-med and engineering. And I was supposed to go to med school, and I decided at the last minute not to. After I spent the summer doing research, I just really liked research. So I had no plan after that when I graduated, and my parents were pretty unhappy and upset because they thought they had spent all this money. Even though I took out a ton of loans to go to school, and I ended up with nothing after I graduated because I didn't have any plan, because I didn't go to med school like I originally planned. So I worked at a company called the Battelle Memorial Institute. This is a different area in industry that not many people know about. So if you have a question about this, I'm happy to answer that too. It's kind of like a third option. You don't do academics, don't do industry. This area is a not-for-profit. It's not nonprofit. It's not-for-profit. So we did lots of classified research for the government. So I got to see some really interesting classified experiments going on, things like that. It was really kind of cool. And I realized that to progress up, everyone had a PhD. So I decided to go back to school. I went to WashU in St. Louis. And so there I focused again on biomedical engineering, and mostly on making coatings, polymer coatings for vascular devices. I got interested in immunology. So then I did a postdoc. I went abroad to Switzerland. So I was there for about 4 years. And I started studying nanotechnology, nanomedicine, particularly in the areas of vaccine development. And so we had some funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to develop vaccines for developing countries, essentially. So they need to have like vaccines that are very stable under different conditions. So I focused quite a bit on how to make really stable nanoparticles that could deliver lots of different things without having to be modified. So very low cost, easy to scale up. So I took that knowledge and I started my lab here at Northwestern. So 2013, about 10 years ago. And so that's what we focus on, is developing drug delivery systems for a variety of different diseases. I like to focus on neglected diseases and neglected communities. So we focus on things like diabetes, Chagas disease, and neglected tropical disease. We do a lot of work with women's health as well. And so I'm really proud of some of these programs that we were able to start here, like the STEM program here was funded by the NSF. And when I was growing up, my parents had no idea what engineering was or what BME was. And so they all wanted me to go to med school. And so that was way too expensive for us. I could not afford to go to med school. So this program, I started to educate not just the students, but also tell the parents, how it all works. To get a PhD, we pay for it. You don't have to pay to be a doctor. We do it. We give your salary even to be a doctor. So I try to spread that knowledge. I was I was able to start the first DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion committee in my department. We tried to focus on all kinds of issues that people want to talk about. So we try to have like an open forum to discuss a variety of different things and topics, whatever's on the mind of the students and the faculty. We try to bring everyone together. So that's me at Northwestern. Again, been there about 10 years. On the top right, that's my family there. So I've been married for about 6 years now. My daughter right there, I have 2 daughters. So I'm a big advocate for women in science. So I'm going to have 2 female engineers for sure. And I'm looking forward to raising them to be engineers. So that's Farah at the top there. She's my newest, and Isla is my 4-year-old. I just had Farah here. She was born in January. So I actually took some leave to stay home. And so that's something people don't talk about a lot for faculty positions is I could take off almost 6 months for paternity leave. And I did that with both of my daughters. And it was really a great experience. Top left, I'm a dog person. So I've always had a dog. That's my dog, Coco. Bottom left here, I guess that's my time in Switzerland. Really like that. As was mentioned before, if you can go abroad, strongly recommend just seeing a different environment, different place where people just do everything a little bit different. It was amazing how small things that just seem so amazing, like even curtains and blinds were totally different. Just seeing how people can think about things in different ways, it was really great. I started a company recently based off of the patents developed in my lab. So this company, SNC Therapeutics, started last December, and we're developing drug delivery systems, and it's a broad platform. So our 2 first indications are for cancer therapy, particularly cancer gene therapy. We're trying to modify the environment inside of tumors. And the second is for tolerance. So for cell transplantation and organ transplantation, we try to retrain the immune system to not reject cells and tissues. So our first indications there are in the areas diabetes and for kidney transplantation. And our first investor so far is AbbVie, and we're still raising funds. We're at the seed stage. So I will stop there. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Scott. I think it's really interesting to see how what kind of direction your career took, especially since for a second there, you really didn't know what to do with your life after you got your education. So I think it's really important for everyone in the audience to see how many directions biomedical sciences can take you into and just the wide variety of work that you can end up doing. And as a general note, I think it's really great to see how so many of our panelists are really interested in promoting diversity in STEM. Since at STEM to the Sky, this is one of our biggest goals. It's really great to see that so many of our panelists hold the same values. And thank you so much to all the panelists for sharing your journeys with all of us. But before we open the floor to live questions, we would like to ask some of our most popular questions from the RSVP form. And panelists, feel free to piggyback off of each other's answers. So I think Marin is going to start off with our first question.
Yeah, so the first question is, what inspired you to go into your current field or profession?
And any of the panelists can just start. There's no specific order.
Okay, I'll start first. So my kind of path has been sort of full circle to this point. My dad was an engineer. My mom actually was an investment banker in healthcare. So I knew I wanted to be an engineer. My dad was like, "Oh, my son's going to be an engineer," kind of like what Dr. Scott is going to do with his daughters. But knew I was going to be an engineer. My mom was always working with cool biotech companies, so I like kind of as time passed grew towards the biotech side and just decided to study that in college. And yeah, decided to kind of experiment with investment banking this past summer. So right now it's kind of looking full circle between my dad and my mom's professions. I assume that's gonna kind of divulge in the future because, as I said before, those IB hours aren't any joke. But yeah, that's how it's looking so far.
I guess I can go next. I essentially got into science when I did research as an undergrad. Essentially, I was pre-med at the time, and I had no idea what research was. And I spent the summer developing these microparticles that could degrade in the intestine to deliver drugs. And I thought that was the most amazing thing ever. And to be able to synthesize and make a new material that hadn't been seen before, I just thought that was the coolest thing. I could make something. Like chemistry is amazing. You can make new materials. I just love that. And so that really kind of got me hooked. And the fact that I could, if you develop a drug that actually is going to get to the market, you can impact millions of people. And I was thinking, my mom was a nurse, and she probably has helped, you could say, thousands of patients over her course of being a nurse. But one drug, and you can affect a million people if you get that to work out. So I just thought the potential there was great, and I just got hooked on science.
Okay, I think for me, I actually wanted to become a clinician until I did an internship in a hospital and decided I really didn't want to work in a hospital. But I was very interested in the whole background and how therapies, how drugs work. So I decided to study molecular biology. And during, I think, my third year, there was a publication by Yamanaka that about induced pluripotent stem cells, and my biochemistry professor at this time introduced this research paper to us, and I was so amazed by it that by the time I knew I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I want to work with stem cells. So I looked for my final year project, I looked for labs, and I actually found a very nice professor in Singapore at the time who was working with stem cells. So I contacted him and I was saying, well, I don't know much, but I want to work with stem cells. And he's like, okay. So he invited me. I did my final year project there. Then he offered me a PhD, so I stayed. And I think what made me really stay and fall in love with this field was of course, the science itself, it's amazing. It's super interesting. Like you can be hyper focused on it and just spend hours and hours reading on it, being creative. It's a very creative work because you are developing new things and you're basically restricted by your own intellect, by your own imagination, and by nothing else. Well, maybe funding, but that's another issue. But also my PhD supervisor and mentor at the point of time, who basically was sharing my passion for things. So we had so many different discussions, and whenever I came up with a new idea about something, he was like, okay, try it out. And I, like, thinking back, I burned so much of his funding at the time, right? Because not everything worked. But it was this sharing of passion, this excitement about it, and being in an environment that was conducive to it. And I think a lot of decisions, if people do science and do research or not, really depends on in which environment they end up.
I think I can also talk to that a little bit when it comes to your environments. Because for me, I grew up building things. So maybe more on the mechanical engineering side of things or electrical. I always like putting things together, whether it was Arduinos or just building things. Like I remember I built something for a competition we did back in the day called Destination Imagination. So it was all about sort of piecing things together. But I also had a love for biology that was cultivated by my grandfather, who was a botanist. So I wanted to sort of synthesize the two together and find a field where both of those skills could really work towards a greater goal. I think Dr. Scott said it perfectly, where in healthcare, it's one of those fields where you can impact millions for one development. There are a lot of other fields where, you have impact, but nothing is as life-changing as saving a life. I think that's what drove me towards biomedical engineering, and then further utilizing my talents to improve the field of biomedical engineering and industry where you can see those impacts quite literally, visibly. So I think it was a combination of those factors that really drove me to choose biomedical engineering and then push me towards industry to try to make change and drive the change. Because you hear you hear a lot of things where these big companies, they don't really do what you want. They don't really help out the public, the general public, and they're vilified to a certain extent. But unless you're the change you want to see, you have to go and be that change, right? Nothing's going to happen. So you have to bring that change to industry, and only then can you really make that lasting positive impact. And I think I sort of went along with that goal to try to bring about what I wanted to see in the world, and I thought I could bring that change to Johnson & Johnson. So that sort of brought me towards industry and then towards a specific company in industry that I thought would be conducive to helping the world. So it's sort of a mix of utilizing my talents and a goal for a greater objective.
I know for me, my pathway was a little more untraditional. My parents were in the military, so when you hit 18, you got three options. You either get a job, you go to school, or you figure your life out. So I wasn't really into science or something like that. I played basketball my whole life growing up, me and my brother, that's just what we did. And I was really into photography. So it wasn't until I had people in my life that kind of helped me steer and realize that I had certain abilities that I didn't even know or see in myself. Like I literally had a chemistry professor say, you need to change your major from biology to chemistry because you're an analytical and critical thinker, and I think you're not using your talents the way you should be. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll do that. And that's what I did and ended up falling in love with chemistry. I also had a high school teacher that was really good in chemistry. But it didn't start off as a passion. It wasn't something that I was really into until college and doing internships. And so I would say, really, it's environment, it's people, it's mentors, it's your own curiosity. And sometimes it can even come down to money. What's going to make you a little bit more money, or what's going to make you happier as well? I think doing a PhD was one of the biggest self-discovery moments in my life to what I really wanted to do. Even my PhD work, it changed over time because I was like, I'm tired of dealing with animals. I'm like, this isn't the way for us to really get this kind of drug to market because so many drugs fail because we start off in animals. And although we do have similar genetic, qualities, it just doesn't work most of the time. So I moved on into computational models and 3D models because those were more physiologically relevant. And again, after a while, I got tired of dealing with myself. I think also I thought academia has definitely had an impact in some of the greatest inventions, and NSF has played a super major role from internet to the Hubble telescope and so many things. And so for me, it was more about seeing that immediate translational impact and that kind of inspired research and seeing that come to fruition and realizing how much, yes, science influences policy, but policy also influences science. And so during my postdoc, I was like, yeah, academia is not for me. I'm gonna try something else. And so I'm here now doing something that I really like and care about and passionate about. And getting on, Teams meetings and Zoom calls, but I like actually working from home. Sometimes I'm like, how did I go in 5 days a week? I go in one day and I'm like, oh, how did I survive that? Again, it's a completely different space. But as I said earlier, it's a jungle gym. You're going to find some things you like to do, some things you don't like to do, things that you're passionate about, some things that just come up even later on in life. I always tell people a CEO doesn't start off as a CEO. They go through many trials, tribulations, ups, downs, and finding who they are. And then afterwards, they probably will become philanthropists, right? So it's always about finding what is next, what keeps you interested, what you're passionate about, and really kind of holding that and making sure you find kind of that peace as well as that balance.
Yeah, thank you so much to all the panelists. I think it's incredible that all of your experiences led to where you are right now, and how the people around you and the surroundings have a really big influence on shaping who you are and sort of deciding where you want to end up within your career, since it's a really diverse career as well. And next we'll have Sasha ask the second question.
All right, so the next question is a two-part question. So the first part is, what would you say is the biggest challenge that you faced in the field of biomedical engineering or biomedical sciences, or in your specific role that you hold? And on the flip side, what do you think is the most rewarding part about what it is that you do?
Well, I think I'll just start, okay? So the most challenging part is, I think, the unknown. People sometimes, especially when I decided for the field. I was still quite young. I'm still young. Okay, so but I was very young, and I just felt like the world is my oyster, and I wanted to travel, etc. But as you grow older, you want a certain stability, especially if you have little humans depending on you. So things change, and then especially if you're in an academic career, you have to understand that you're supposed to be doing postdoc in different labs. You're actually supposed to even do it in different countries. So you have an international lifestyle. You don't have a 9-to-5 job, and you don't have you have basically a fixed term contract in the beginning. So it takes time until you get substantiated. And with this, there's a lot of insecurities that come in. So where are you going to be in 5 years? Where are you going to send your children to school? Like, how is your life going to be? So it's a lot of insecurities there. And although they may not matter when you're like 18 or 20 or 22, latest when you hit like late 20s, early 30s, you really start thinking about these things. And then you may actually consider thinking like, oh, maybe that wasn't the best choice. And how do you deal with that? Or even when so I'm an assistant professor, so I will be hopefully substantiated next year. But again, it's not a given. Like, I'm not too nervous about it, but it's not a given. So there's a lot of insecurities around like, how do you fit your adult life with your choices that you made earlier on? And to give you like more of my own answer to that is to realize that there's no clear-cut path of where you go, but that if you just have to believe in yourself, and you have to know that when one door closes, another opens. So when I, for example, left Singapore to work back in Europe, I didn't think that I would actually go back to Asia, but I actually, within 3 years, I was all back and very happy about it. So things happen, and believe in yourself, and believe in your own capabilities, and believe that things will work out, not because it's a chance, but because you have these capabilities, and there's always a way for you and a way out for you. And as for like the most rewarding part, it's I think at the moment, obviously, I'm really happy when I get a really good paper published. I'm also like thinking about going towards spinning off a company and bringing one of my biomaterials into clinical application. So that's super exciting for me, because I really wanted from the beginning to not only do research on paper, but eventually really bring something into clinical applications. So I think that at the stage of where my research is, I'm exactly at the point where I can do that, where I can really pursue this way. So I'm very excited about that. And the other thing that is also giving me a lot of pleasure is to actually see that I have a lot of students and also staff around that maybe even have already left my lab. I'm still in contact with them, who basically started sharing the same passions I do for research. So I can see that, they develop the same love for the things, and they're pursuing a career, and I can see them growing also, not only as a scientist or as a researcher, but also as a person, becoming more confident and really stepping up and taking chances and believing in themselves. So to see that you can have an influence on people in that way, it's incredible. And I think that by this, I have actually influenced some people and really made a difference in their life. And this is something that is really valuable to me as well.
I think that was a great question. I think when it comes to challenges, a lot of them have been tied to my identity and intersectionality as a Black woman. Um, but also has led to a lot of rewards as well. I'm not even gonna lie. So being in lab, having people question you, having people doubt you because your education came from an HBCU, having learning terms like microaggression and unconscious bias and being, having those inflicted on you, you're just like, whoa, this isn't what I signed up for. Mind you, I came from a place where I was culturally safe. I was surrounded by people that looked like me, that understood my background, a lot of us being first generation or low income or single parent households. And so when you go to a place where that is not the norm and you're different, people like to point that out and sometimes use it against you. But what I will say that made me learn so much about myself, so much about my strength, so much about my confidence, so much even more about where I came from and how my degree just wasn't for me. It was for my family, it was for my friends, it was for my grandfather. Like, it's just, you bring a lot more sometimes when you're from different places other than the majority. So that was a challenge. Scientifically, the challenge was really trusting my ability, but also understanding that failure is a learning opportunity. It's not the end just because one experiment failed. If you ever go into science, you'll learn you fail a lot. Sometimes you have to be a lot more comfortable with failure and realizing that, it's part of the learning lesson into that scientific discovery. And so trusting in myself, knowing I can do this. Sometimes I read my dissertation, I'm like, I really wrote that, didn't I? Or I was in front of an experiment like, IDK, what the hell I'm doing, but we're gonna get through it day by day. So those were some of the challenges. And I think reward-wise, I think showing up and being authentic in a space where there wasn't a lot of me has encouraged and allowed other people to now be biomedical engineers or go into PhD programs. And they write to me asking for help, advice, knowledge, anything of that. And I'm just like, hey, if I don't want people to go through what I went through. So I try to be there for them at every step of the turn. I think scientifically rewarding, I mean, having your papers published, having them cited, having people actually telling you like, hey, we reviewed your paper in our book club. I'm like, oh, really? I don't know what I wrote, it's a couple of years, but I hope it was helpful. And also just the doors that it's opened. I mean, I think I would have gotten somewhere without a PhD, but I think a PhD for me has opened doors and allowed for so many great opportunities and people and networks come into my life that I'm super and supremely grateful for.
I can go next, I guess. So I would say that the challenges changed throughout the career. So in the beginning, like undergrad, I did not look like the typical engineer. I was a football and lacrosse player, and so I didn't look like a typical engineer. And plus, there weren't many Black students in engineering when I was there, and so getting confidence was something that came out of all of this. Knowing that you actually could do it just as good as everyone else if you work hard. So I think that was the initial challenge, which is, I was mentioned before, like confidence in yourself and developing that. Then getting a PhD was totally different, and that was a scary experience because you have this imposter syndrome where you feel like, am I over my head here? Everyone seems to know what they're doing except for me. Then you realize everyone is like that the first 2 years, and then you get more confident and you can take on your project yourself. So that was the next stage. But then starting a lab, I was really shocked when you realize that you're not really trained to run a lab. You've been the scientist up until this point working in a lab, and then all of a sudden you have to manage people. And like, how do I hire people? How do I manage the money for this lab? And then I got scared because it's how do you get money? Because funding is extremely hard to get. And no matter how good you are, I think like close to 85-90% of your grants get rejected, and you just get used to the rejection, and you keep trying until you get things going. And so then, once you start to get money coming in, then you're worried about tenure. Am I going to get tenure? And so it kind of just changes over time. But in the end, it's extremely rewarding. As was mentioned before, knowing that you had students that succeeded or that went to companies. I had my first student get his own lab last year. I was really super proud to have a student go on and start his own lab. He's doing great now. He just got his first grant, so it's really cool to know that. And um, also something really rewarding is the fact that you can constantly change, at least in academics. Like you can always change your topic of research. And so now that I'm getting into like a company, I had nothing about starting companies, and now I've learned all this stuff about investment banking and VCs and how you get IND for your drug. It's totally different. And so it's not like if I'm a professor for 10 years, all of a sudden I'm learning something from scratch, you know, I knew nothing about business. And so it was really exciting to be able to start over in a new area. And so I really like that. That's part of science too, is that you can always find something new and learn something new. So I'll stop there.
I'd like to echo that sentiment 100%. I mean, the challenges, I think they change. And, you know, the challenge of always learning something new always exists, but that's part of the reward in of itself, at least throughout my journey. I mean, back when I was in high school, you know, it was difficult learning classes. You started from the basics, laying the foundation with algebra 2. Then you get to engineering school and you're learning calculus, differentials, left and right. And then you go down, you got signal processing, Fourier transforms. You know, it's that constant growth and that constant challenge. But once you surpass the challenge, it feels like the reward is just exponential and it keeps on building and it never stops. I think that's something that I've come to appreciate even when working in industry, because coming into industry, I'm pretty young on the spectrum. I'm only 22 years old. So coming in with people who was sort of in my position, working right next to my peers, they have 20, 30 years of experience. It's kind of hard to keep up and you have a sense of imposter syndrome. But something you really have to cultivate throughout the entire journey is that level of self-confidence and assessing what you have to bring to the table when it comes to value. Because you're not going to keep up with their 20 years of supply chain experience or drug development experience. That's not what they want you to be there for. Instead, they want your unique perspective and your unique skill set that you bring. And for me, that was sort of my ability to learn quickly and my ability to apply technology to different situations as an engineer. It was the problem solving methodology that I'd learned throughout engineering school that I could then use to craft solutions to these different problems that, you know, someone who had 20 years of experience was facing. So I think that sort of was one of the challenges and the rewards that I ended up facing throughout my career journey, even though it's slowly only just begun. But I think another big challenge that I faced coming into industry is I didn't expect how slow change and innovation takes. And as someone who is, you know, young and on the cutting edge of most things, I'm also a machine learning engineer, machine learning developer. I love technology. I love AI. I also love policy. I'm planning to go to law school, things like that. So it's really interesting to see the juxtaposition of how fast technology develops and how slow it takes policy to develop. And sort of that is reflected in company policies and how a company changes over time. So when you want to, you know, make all these wonderful improvements that could improve efficiency, increasing patient output by 100,000, you know, you're helping 100,000 more lives. And you have all these great initiatives and seeing how it takes so long to really get them applied and put through some in a large corporation like Johnson Johnson, it's a little sort of like it's a little kind of like disheartening to see, but at the same time, you realize there are reasons for that, right? Because looking at AI nowadays too, you see how with this unfettered development, there are so many different sort of drawbacks and dangers that are coming to surface, where you have LLMs being able to take any kind of data and piecing it together to give you these crazy outputs. You have voice maps being able to mimic anyone, deepfakes, things like that. And it also kind of showed me the value in slowing things down too, which is something I did not expect. So I think the challenge itself gave me the reward of understanding the other side of things and the other perspective when it comes to development and innovation. I think that sort of summarizes what I learned from my initial stages in industry, because I was the kind of guy that wants to continually develop, continually grow, continually to change things for the better. But you know, sometimes it's nice to take a step back and assess things from a bigger picture and see, hey, is there the infrastructure to support this, or could I be doing more bad than good, even though I think that, you know, this is a revolutionary enhancement. But on the other side of things, just working in the healthcare industry, I think the biggest reward for me, I've talked about it before, is helping people. I think that's something Dr. Grayson talked about, where you have these greater goals that drive you throughout your education, throughout your life, whether you're getting a college degree for yourself, your grandparents, your family, these greater goals and these greater ideals really help give you motivation to keep pulling through. And that's something I've come to realize, even though I'm quite young and I've just gotten started. I've come to the conclusion that I'll make money no matter where I go, no matter what I do, it will happen. It's a given with our knowledge and our experience. It's what I want to do in that process while getting there that I think will really define what I look back upon. And I think the healthcare industry is one of my greatest opportunities to make that difference whilst making money. Don't get me wrong, it's good too, but it gives me that chance to make that difference, and I think that's the greatest reward I have seen so far.
Yeah, great points from everyone. This is a bit of a tough question for me because in the grand scheme of things, I don't have that much experience in the field or really life. I'm only 20. But one of the things that was specific to me going into Stanford was I knew I wanted to do bioengineering, but as you know, the field is just so broad. So I really kind of bogged myself down trying to pick a field, like whether I want to do protein engineering, tissue engineering, genetic engineering. And like, I feel like that kind of slowed me down. And just to quickly answer and kind of get into like how that, my biggest accomplishment, I can't necessarily remember the verbiage of the question, but I think that kind of led to me just picking something, reaching out to someone and really building those relationships. And I think now I've built a significant network of people who really want to see me succeed. And that is really the best thing I could have asked for. So yeah, that's what I got for that.
Thank you. I think it's really important for everyone to hear you be so open about the challenges that you have faced in both your education and in your careers. And I think it's even more important to hear that the work that you do does get rewarded, and it gets rewarded more than once. And although this is such a difficult field to work in, I personally think it's a really difficult field to work in just because there's so many opportunities and it kind of tears you apart. But at the same time, everything that you do does have meaning to someone. And that's probably the most important part of the work that you do.
Okay, moving on to our next question. What would you say are some quick, most important skills to have to succeed in your field or profession? These can be either like hard skills or soft skills. If you could just give a few, and that'll be great.
I stated earlier, being an analytical, critical thinker, sometimes even thinking of things that people may think it's a little out there, a little crazy. I mean, someone thought Albert Einstein was not, off his rocker, but clearly he was a brilliant man. If you just saw Oppenheimer when they came up with the atomic bomb, a lot of people thought, how can you do this? This is impossible. But I think with persistence, they all believed in this stuff. So being persistent, thinking, always being curious. And those are like some more of like, I would say some of the soft-ish skills, maybe mixed with some hard. But I think one of the things that we often miss, but I'm starting to learn a little bit more, is people management, project management, leadership skills with different projects. I think those are some of the skills that I think will make you really set you apart when it comes to working on teams and working with people. Everyone doesn't have to be your friend, but getting along with people, finding your allies, finding people you at least have a little bit in common with. So when you're sitting on that Zoom meeting 5 minutes beforehand, you can talk to them about something versus just sitting in awkward silence, building relationships. Those are definitely some key things I think that have helped me along the way.
So I would say the most important thing is actually something that's not taught in school very well, which is to learn from failure. So in school, we're not really taught to fail. Everything has to be perfect all the time. But if you actually look back and see what are the things I learned the most from, it's when you fail and you got up and you found your mistake, or you troubleshot the problem and you figured it out. Um, at a certain point, you'll get to a place where the competition is so high that the failure happens all the time. And so if you can't learn from it, or if you can't just like, take it in stride and keep going, then you won't be able to get very far. And so, as I mentioned, 90% of the grants I submit get rejected. And that's not just for me, that's for people who have like Nobel Prizes. They're sending out stuff and it's getting rejected. But 1 in 10, it gets through. And you have to learn from the mistakes as to why didn't it get through the first time? What can I correct here? Why didn't my experiment work? What can I do here? So being able to learn from failure and to use that, I think it's really important skill to have.
Yeah, pretty much the most important skill that I've kind of developed, and I don't know if you can consider it a skill, but was getting over imposter syndrome. There's always going to be someone better than you in some aspect. I think that I was very lucky in that I think I got over my imposter syndrome early on in high school. I actually took Mandarin from freshman year to junior year, and my school was 60% Asian. The entire class spoke Mandarin, were native speakers. And so I kind of got used to being the dumbest person in the room at all times. And going into Stanford, I'm surrounded by geniuses everywhere I go. And I feel like that's really helped me not to kind of get in the mindset of that I don't belong. So I really think that it's really beneficial to kind of take some moments to reflect that you're really just not going to be always be the smartest person in the room, and you got to be comfortable with that.
I think for me, one of the biggest skills I learned was how to be your own advocate. Because at the end of the day, you have mentors and peers and coworkers and teachers to guide you, but you are in charge of shaping your future. And it really comes down to the decisions you make and the way you present yourself that can help guide and propel you forward. And I know a lot of us, we've learned, we don't like talking about ourselves. That's the most difficult part. I mean, you can go to someone else and ask them to talk about you, and they'll tell great things about you. But when you try to orate things about yourself, it just turns the other way around, which is really interesting. It happened to me too at the beginning when I was trying to sort of go to these interviews and they ask you questions about yourself. So learning how to do that, learning how to talk about yourself in a way that's really represents who you are and what you bring to the table, I think is one of the greatest skills you can have in, the world we are in today, where you have to advocate for yourself. But that's sort of the soft skill I wanted to talk about in terms of technical skills. As I am sort of part of the next generation working in industry, I can tell you, coming in with a lot of your engineering expertise and backgrounds, any technical skills you bring into industry will blow people away. It could be from the smallest like knowledge of Python or Java to like data analytics, just understanding how data foundation works. You can bring that into any field in industry, whether it's compliance law. I did a natural language processing analysis across 480 corporate integrity agreements. No one even thought of the idea because they were all lawyers trained in classical like manual analysis of each corporate integrity agreement, legal literature document. So it's being able to bring in your skills and whatever you think you bring to the table, both technically and sort of like what aligns with you, and then applying it to whatever field you're in. I think that's the greatest skill you can have, along with advocating for yourself.
I have to say that I did learn a lot right now. For the one thing I really appreciate is to understand that I'm not the only one with imposter syndrome. I thought it's just me. So that really helps because I still have it sometimes, especially, if you are actually approached by people and congratulated for a grant or for a paper and you feel like, yeah, I think I just got it by accident or I was lucky, but in the end, and like if it happens again and again, you kind of try, or you start to understand that maybe you are where you are because you're really supposed to be, not because you are lucky. So, but this imposter syndrome is still there. It's quite interesting to see that it's actually happening through all stages of career, and it doesn't go away, but people just deal with it. What I think it's important. So I think one thing I would really agree with Eden Scott is that you really need to be resilient. You really, as a academic, you have to be able to handle rejection on all levels, not only grants but also papers. And sometimes, if you read the comments, there's awfully personal, to say it in a way, and you just have to be able to like not get it, not to let it close to you, and understand that maybe somebody had a bad day on that day, but on the other hand, you have to be able to filter out the comments that are actually technical and important and valuable, and learn from it. So in the way, you have to be able to really work well with criticism. It's what really makes you better. If you do mistakes and nobody tells you what kind of mistakes you do, you keep doing them, and your learning curve is much flatter. But if you actually get the feedback, even if it's sometimes painful because you spent years on doing something and somebody tells you that it's actually not that good, it hurts. It hurts personally, but you learn from that. Another thing that I think is very important is you have to believe in yourself, in your own creativity. You have to be self-motivated, because especially at the point where you're having your own lab, you're the only one who decides how much you work, how much you put in. So, and even as a PhD student, it's not about the hours you spend in the lab, it's about what you do with your life and what you do with your research. So it's really self-motivation and love for your topic. I think another very important thing is people skills. So research doesn't happen in a vacuum. Sometimes, people who are outside of the STEM research feel like, well, researchers are these nerds who are like hiding behind the lab bench. It's really not true. It's very collaborative within the lab, within a department, and within different universities, countries. So I have collaborators and friends from all around the world. And what started as a work collaboration ended up in a friendship. And if you work by yourself and you try to be an island, you will not get very far. So you have to understand that you only have certain talents, capabilities, and you have to find people who have synergistic talents and capabilities to you, and then together you have to excel. And to this point, you should not ask yourself a question, what can I get out of something? Of course, you have to make sure that your interests are met as well. But if you start working with someone, you should think about, what can I bring to the table? What valuable input can I bring to this project to make it better? So only if you're actually generous, you will find good collaborators. And if you find people who have the same attitude towards this, you will see that it organically develops into something very useful.
Thank you so much.
Can I just add something? Because I've now heard all the panelists use this term, and it's something that I like to provide a different perspective on. So for me, I do not personally prescribe to the term imposter syndrome. I do not see how, I'll put it this way. I think it's a term that has been over-normalized. It is something that I have self-doubt. I need something to describe it, imposter syndrome, but you have to be very careful about the words that you use to describe yourself. And imposter syndrome to me has always been like kind of a pet peeve and a big one for mine. I mean, you break down the word imposter, right? That really indicates something of illegal activity. And to my knowledge, none of us have done anything illegal. You think of syndrome. Syndrome is something that indicates a real bad health quality, right? Something that you get diagnosed with. How many people on this call have personally been diagnosed with imposter syndrome? You can't. It's not part of the DSM-5, so you can't be diagnosed with it. So I think it's important that we think about the terms that we use to describe ourselves and realize that that doesn't necessarily apply to you. So when I do ask people to describe what they mean by imposter syndrome, I'm like, you're describing self-doubt. Everyone has self-doubt. And just because it's a popular term and it's out there doesn't mean we need to use it and apply that to ourselves. I also want to say that study where that term came about came from a group of people, particularly white women, which don't describe anyone on this call. It wasn't inclusive of different people to actually describe that experience. And so you have to be careful, again, when you're looking at certain studies, what did that group look like? Who is it that says that? And does that actually apply to me? And for me, it just doesn't. And then lastly, it's more or less about taking the blame and putting it on you, but more about the institutions that we are in. And the actual responsibility is on them for creating these spaces where unconscious bias, stereotype, threat can actually make you feel like you don't belong or that you have self-doubt. So while I do believe it is real, I do think that we have to break that trap of immediately going to, oh, I have imposter syndrome, when really you're just going through moments of self-doubt. And if it's self-doubt, maybe you need to read up on it more. Maybe you need to work on this a little bit more. Maybe you talk to a mentor who specializes in it, because everyone in the room, like you said, is not going to be the smartest. Everyone's not going to know everything. So I'm giving a talk about this in SWEET coming up in October, but I really think it's important that we stop normalizing using that word so much and realizing we may have self-doubt, or it's really the workplace that we're in that's causing me to feel this way. It's not me personally. But I just wanted to provide a different perspective and let people know, like, you don't always have to go to that word. There's other ways to describe how you feel outside of that. And I just want us to be cognizant when we're using it. We just don't have to overly normalize it.
Yes, thank you so much to all of the panelists. I found it really insightful that it is really important to be confident not only in yourself, but and which will also lead to sort of learning from your failure and sort of accepting that criticism. And I also think it's really important that you learn how to talk about yourself and as well as to communicate with other people, especially to sort of expand your sort of communication field within biomedical engineering as well. Thank you so much for your amazing responses so far. We are close to the end of the panel, so we would like to open up the floor to the audience members to ask questions now. So if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask your questions, or you can also drop your questions in the chat as well.
All right, so we already have one question, and it's, do you have any advice for high schoolers who want to get exposed to research?
I can address that really quickly. The best thing to do is to send emails to as many people as possible until you get a response. And don't be disheartened if people don't respond right away. So I get emails all the time, and from high schoolers that want to work in my lab. And to be honest, it's actually a liability to have someone working in your lab, especially if you do chemistry, who has never done chemistry before. So I'm always usually inclined to say no, but I direct them usually to a program. So that many times there are high school programs that they might not know about, where they could actually get the training or be in an environment where it's supportive to allow you to do that. And there's also special programs in almost every state for high schoolers to get research experience. I did one in Florida, which was really great. It really sparked my interest further in science. But I would say, yeah, email faculty in the areas that you're interested in, and just don't be disheartened when they don't respond. It's not because they don't want to. It's just they might not see the email, or they're just busy, but just keep trying.
I would say check out like local things that are happening in the community. There's hackathons, there's tours at museums, science museums, and sometimes you might run into someone working in a lab volunteering that you can talk to then work with them and be a help of some sort. I've had a high school student shadow me when I was in grad school. It was mostly because her dad knew our PI, but she had connections and she used them. And I remember her watching things that I did. I think also just like remaining inquisitive. A lot of times relationships, things can form because you're asking the right questions and you're things that somebody maybe hasn't thought of. So definitely using your connections, reaching out, going to local events, science events. I think those are some ways that high school students can definitely get their foot in the door. Even when I was in grad school, we had Girl Scout Engineering Day. So we had Girl Scouts come on campus and we taught them all things dealing with biomedical engineering. And I'm sure if they pushed, eventually they could have gotten into a lab. But those are just certain things that I at least have been exposed to that I know of that can get high school students involved.
I think another thing to add here is that the universities do offer open days or like introduction days to the high school. So do be informed about like the different departments or school at the universities to offer those, and you can always sign up for those and go, and you will be introduced to like the different courses, teaching programs. You will have lab tours. There might be even small experiments performed. And although not all professors will be there, some of them will be there. So it's your chance to kind of get in contact with them, talk to them. And if you actually get one of those to talk to you, it's much more personal per email. So your chances to actually get into an internship and be in the lab is much higher if you actually have a personal communication. So do look out for those events in universities as well.
I think just to add on to that, especially if you're looking at specific labs, most of the time the way it works when I worked in an undergraduate lab is I was paired with a graduate student mentor to sort of work on some projects with them. So you can also reach out to the students in their lab or the graduate students in their lab, because usually you end up working with some of those graduate students because most PIs are really busy people with a lot of things to handle. So that could be another alternative to reach out to. But like what Dr. Scott said, emailing is the best way that I know of.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add. I feel like we could get to the next question with what little time we have left. So
Okay, thank you for your answers on this question. I can agree that it is important for students to get out and be proactive. I think it was Karthik that mentioned this. If you want to see things happen, you shouldn't just sit around and wait for it to happen. You should go out and do the things that you want to do. And I think it was helpful for our audience to see. And Maren, if you want to take the next question.
Yeah. So our next question is, do you have any book recommendations for newcomers in biotechnology or bioengineering appropriate for a college freshman or maybe even high school students as well?
Yeah, and I think while you think about that question, you can probably just type it into the chat. And I think we'll just ask our last question since we are pretty short on time. And that is the fact that many people place a lot of importance on the reputation and the prestige of a specific university. And do you think that that actually really matters when it comes to research, and especially biomedical sciences research or bioengineering research?
Go ahead, Evan.
Oh, sure. I'm going to say yes and no. Number one thing is going to be how hard you work, to be honest. You can come from any environment and do great things. And it's kind of a fallacy to think that you have to rely on prestige of this or that. When in the end, if you have done amazing work or good work and demonstrated that you know your topic, know your area, that you worked hard, it comes out and it's evident. And that's actually what people are looking for. Once you get to grad school, faculty are not looking to hire people who just get straight A's. We're looking for people who've had challenges and who've addressed those challenges in creative ways. And so that's the number one thing I can say is you don't have to come from Harvard or these top places to do great things. You can do great things anywhere.
My sentiments exactly.
I just want to add a slightly different perspective here as well, which obviously it really depends on you and how much effort and motivation you put into something. However, being in a lot of the committees for like selecting graduate students for the school, etc., I know that certain things on a CV matter. And I know that especially if you are pursuing an academic career, to have certain universities, like, Times Higher Education Ranking top 200 is really helpful. And if you have those, it's much easier to have the attention of the university you're applying to. So it is definitely a facilitator when it comes to research. Now, it's not the decisive factor in how successful you are going to be. And I think another, like, especially if you're at the stage where you're finishing up your bachelor's or your master's and you want to pursue a PhD or postdoc, a lot of people graduate. A lot of people have really good grades. So how do you distinguish yourself from everybody else? So it's about this extra mile that you walk. And one thing that, for example, PIs and supervisors look out for at this stage is what have you done in research and how independent did you work? So have you, for example, published papers? So going to, especially since there will be like a lot of high school students and future, like freshmen in the audience, try to get into research and into a lab as early as possible. Try to, approach PIs, be a student helper, try to walk this extra mile. If you really love research, if this is what you want to do, don't wait until your last year to do a final year project. Go in there, ask for it. And if you do that, it will be natural for you to be a co-author or even a first author on a paper. And when you then apply for a graduate school or later on for postdocs, etc., this will distinguish you from everyone else.
Thank you for all of your questions, and thank you also for responding to the questions in the chat. Unfortunately, we will have to conclude the discussion here because we are getting close to the end of the event. But before we do so, we would like to take a quick Zoom screenshot with our panelists and our attendees for our social media recap post. So Annie, if you could take that screenshot. And for those in the audience who would like to turn on their cameras for this picture, please do so as well. So Annie will be taking around 2 to 3 photos so that we can get the best shot.
I'll just give everyone a second to turn their camera on if they want, and then I'll count down. All right. Okay, I'm gonna take 2 to 3. So everyone smile. Okay, got it. Thank you, everyone. And then let me share my screen, and then we can get to wrap up quickly before our time is up.
All right, so if you would like to be tagged in our post, please type your Instagram handle into the chat below. And if you already included your Instagram in the RSVP form, you will automatically be tagged. And so here's the contact information for our panelists. So if you have any questions that you couldn't get in today, feel free to take a screenshot of the slide and reach out to our panelists.
Great. Thanks, Sasha. I can talk a little bit about how to get involved with STEM to the Sky. So first of all, you can follow us on all of our social media accounts. So we're on Instagram and Twitter at STEM to the Sky, and then LinkedIn and YouTube also STEM to the Sky. You can also email us at stemtothesky@gmail.com. In addition, we have rolling team applications to join one of our 7 amazing sub-teams of STEM to the Sky. And those are the people who make this panel happen and all of our other events and initiatives. So we really encourage you guys to join. So you can find information about that on our website as well. And you can also subscribe to our mailing list on our website, or if you want to put your email in the chat, we can add you as well.
And we actually recently just passed our 3-year anniversary. Eileen and I started this 3 years ago during COVID in 2020 on August 5th. So it's just pretty surreal to be able to see the organization that we've grown so far. This is our 6th speaker panel. And we've featured some really amazing people. And again, our team is so incredible. And we keep on expanding, keep on building. And for both of us, we're going into college this year, so we're really excited to expand. And we hope that everybody will be able to continue following us and supporting our mission.
Real quick, I want to give a special shout out to Dr. Grayson. She's actually one of our first interviewees. You can check out her interview on our website, but it's kind of a nice full circle moment to have her on the panel today.
It is. And I just want to say I'm so proud of you too. You guys have done an amazing job. And so it's wonderful to be one of the first, but it's great to see you all moving on, but also just leaving such an impact as well.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone for being here. And thank you to all of our panelists. It was amazing to hear from all of you guys speak.
A great thing you guys are doing. Thank you so much for inviting me. And it's interesting. And thank you all for also to the other panelists. I did learn for me early morning, and I already learned. So I'm very happy about that.
All right. Again, thank you for everyone. Sorry, I think I cut someone off. Thank you so much for everyone who was here today, the panelists and our attendees. And thank you so much to Annie and Eileen for making this happen. If you want to stay behind and ask a couple of questions, you can hang around for a couple of minutes. And if not, you can feel free to leave the Zoom call. And we'll also be sending out a feedback form later today or tomorrow, so you can let us know what you would like to see from STEM to the Sky in the future.